And we're live. Hi, everyone. So thanks, everyone, for joining us today. So to start, I'm Laura, Kobo Writing Life's Author Engagement Manager. I'm excited to be with all these talented authors today, talking about their experience writing in a collaborative world. So I have my questions ready for them, but please feel free to leave any questions in the comments, and we will try to answer any at the end if we have time. And to start us off in the comments, let's have everyone joining us comment and tell us where you're tuning in from. So Rich already started saying he's in New York. So hi, Richard. And also to start us off, let's kind of start by telling listeners a little bit about ourselves and what kind of books you write. So Ember, why don't we start with you?
All right. Hi. Thanks so much for having us. I'm Ember Leigh. I write steamy contemporary romance, but primarily I focus on rom-com and billionaires. And this is my first shared world project. And I feel so lucky that this group in particular came together because it's been an amazing experience. So.
Liz, why don't we go with you next?
Hi, everyone. I'm Liz Alden. I write steamy rom-coms with travel inspired in them. I've lived on a sailboat for the past 10 years, so I have a series that's set on sailboats, and then I have a series set in Europe. And my book in the Farm to Forking universe has a van life heroine.
Great. Erin, what about you next?
Hi, I'm Erin Mallon, and I write romantic comedies. And also, I come from the theater world, and I'm an audiobook narrator. So I've taken on my plays that I've written for the stage and adapted them for audio. So all my plays and my books are very comedy forward, but they always try to get in like a lot of heart and like a little zinger of a message in there. So, and my book is called Bringing Home the Bacon, and it's a surprise baby romance.
I love the punny titles and all the tropes, so we're definitely going to get into that a little bit later. Karen, what about you?
Hi, I'm Karen Gray, and like Ember, this has just been such an amazing experience, and so I'm really grateful to be working with friends like this, both brand new friends and some I've known for years now. My book, for Fork's sake, I have to be careful how I say it, in this world, is my very first contemporary romance, because all my books previously have been what I call nostalgic romantic comedies. So my first series was set in the 1980s, and my second series was set in the 1990s. So it's I'm almost done with my book in Farm to Forking, and it's crazy how different it's been writing contemporary than writing in the near past. But yeah, that's me.
Okay, and last but definitely not least, Lainey.
Hello, I'm Lainey Davis, and I also write steamy contemporary, mostly rom-com. I do have an angsty series that I revisit when I need a break from rom-com. Almost all of my books are set in Pittsburgh, where I live. So this Farm to Forking project was a real stretch for me to be setting my books in a made-up place, which has been a really fun challenge. And, like everyone else said, I've really love this collaborative process. I think it's done so much for my whole writing process and my creativity.
Yeah, so let's get into the Farm to Forking series. So we're here today to talk about the whole collaborative writing process. Karen, can you start by telling us kind of where this idea came from and how the group came together to write?
Well, there is some controversy as to where the idea came from and when it happened. But I think that kind of Liz and Lainey and I were each, and maybe not even together, all talking about how we wanted to do some sort of collaborative world. And we had met each other at a conference online in 2021. And there's a group of authors from that have been talking almost every Friday since then, who are all rom-com writers. So we've known each other there. And then we also collaborated on a couple of other projects, which were taking writing on a theme, but not in a collaborative world. Or we did a Kickstarter together for large print books. And then Erin and I share an acting theater background with Erin, and we also are both, or I was an audiobook narrator. I've retired from that. But she and I happened to publish our very first books the same time. So our first novels. And so we sort of know each other from there. And then when this started to come together, I think it was originally, we wanted to do something with farmers markets or farm to table restaurants. At one point, it was going to be like a camp for grownups. There were a lot of different ideas floating around. And then we pulled in Ember, that we all sort of knew tangentially from other places. And it wasn't until we committed to doing the project, I think, that we made a decision about this was going to be about a family farm, and that we would each sort of take one of the siblings to star in our books. Did I do it all?
I think the only thing was that actually Karen and Lainey and I met in person at the Romance Author Mastermind Conference in Houston.
But we met a year before that in virtual.
Yeah, in the virtual one.
Okay. So, but
yeah.
2020, oh my gosh, so long ago, y'all.
Yeah.
The COVID years kind of all blend together.
They sure do.
So how did you decide because it's a family that makes up the series, how do you decide which book comes first and which sibling should have the first book? This is kind of a question for anyone who wants to jump in.
Well, we set about naming them all, and then we each shared like what trope we wanted to tackle. And I think we all, just it so happened that the place in the series that we wanted to be was a place where nobody else wanted to be. And I don't know if you want to share, Ember, why you wanted to be last.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say, actually, was I feel like part of the decision making had to do with our personal schedules. Like who wanted to publish first versus who wanted to publish last. And I personally knew that I wanted to go last in the series because I run a business with my husband and we have a high season. We run food trucks, and there's a big portion of each year that like I can't write. I can't commit to writing because we're just too busy working the food trucks. So I knew that for my writing schedule, I had to be able to publish like September time. So that put me with the youngest sibling and the last book.
That makes sense. Do you have like a food truck romance book that people should be looking out for, or do you have plans to write one if you don't have one already?
I did write one. Oh yeah. It was the last book in my Bayshore rom-com series. And I took all of the mishaps of the food truck industry and put it in that book. It was great.
You were like, I know everything about the food trucks.
Yes.
I can write all the mishaps. That's great.
Yeah, it was therapeutic.
Yeah, for sure. So the next question's for Erin. So as the title of the series suggests, all the books have a farm setting. So where did the idea for the setting come from, and how did you all kind of work together to expand the universe and add more to it?
But it's so interesting being asked these questions because part of the exciting thing about this for me is that all our ideas have kind of like melded into this one thing that it's hard to go back and pinpoint who said what and where was the seed planted and stuff like that. But that's what we're here to do. So let me see if I can do it.
No pun intended.
Oh, I intended it. No, I didn't intend it, but I heard it. It was there. Well, when we were talking about like an adult summer camp thing, I this is not me taking credit for the location, but I remember I had been to a place in the Catskills in the mountains, and it's a couple hours north of where I live. And it was exactly that. It was kind of like a Dirty Dancing type place where, you know, all the people are there for a bunch of weeks and they all get to know each other. And so we started talking about that, but then that wasn't the exact right idea, but the location kind of felt right. And we each started sending each other articles. Oh, I heard of this farm up that way. Oh, I know someone who lives near Albany. That's kind of close to the Catskills. And then we started, is that right? We started just like crafting around that area. It felt good that it would be a place that was a couple hours away from a major city, from New York City, that people from the city might come up that way. And that could help us with side characters, or even in some of our cases, a main character who comes to this small town for a reason from a big city. Um, yeah. And then we came
I
up with,
think the reason we ended up with the farm was that we decided that a family and siblings would be the easiest, clearest structure to move from one book to another and have
yeah.
that sort of backbone of, and then, I mean, I think also we like series where it's families and you get to know every sibling in their own book. So it's definitely, I think it was like circling the drain or something. That sounds bad. You know, we sort of kept circling around, no, circling before we made a landing. That's better. We were just throwing lots and lots of brainstorming. And then once somebody said, or we got to this family farm, then all of the ideas became much more solid.
Yeah.
Like
And I
the
think-
whole kickoff with the farm being in a huge debt, which happens at the beginning of the first book. That's Lainey's book. And then that gave us all a conflict that would run through that we'd all have to deal with. So I think it was just like, oh, this will be clear. This will be, because a lot of our anxieties in starting were like, how are we going to share all this? How are we going to keep track of all this? You know, because I think I'm sorry, I'm talking too much, but I think most shared worlds tend to be kind of distant from each. The books are not as collaborative as we have ended up being. And it takes a lot more work, but it's also a hell of a lot more fun, I think, because we really are co-editing almost each other's books and helping each other get through problems, but also, you know, somebody creates a character and then somebody else takes it and takes it the next journey through the book. So, all right, I'm going to shut up now, but that's my end.
I think looking back now, it worked out probably better. Like you see a lot of series that are family and you see a lot of series that are like best friends, and a group of best friends have a certain dynamic consistently throughout the friend group versus a family series where you have siblings that all have like different multi-dimensional, a little bit more complex dynamics and relationships with each other. So like they don't always get along super well. And like Jackson, Ember's brother, like he's not around because he's the I guess he's a rock star. We have it in the blurb. So like he's out making his fame and fortune, and so you know he's kind of like the lost brother. And my main character Alex and Lainey's main character Ethan, they're the two oldest, and they've been like kind of butting heads their entire lives, and that is like this. It's a stressful dynamic for them. And it gave us an opportunity to really kind of explore like sibling relationships a bit more.
I wanted to add, this is Lainey speaking. I know there's a lot of different ways to approach a shared world, or sometimes they're only linked together by a setting, or sometimes there's just a small element of the plot that the books have in common. And from the get-go, we really wanted it to be a shared world. So we set out to do this collaboratively. We wanted it to feel like, I mean, I think each of the books could stand alone, but it is such a richer experience if you read all of them. And so setting out with that intent from the very beginning really changed our process and was quite a big time commitment, a commitment to one another, because we've been online doing these kinds of virtual calls almost every week for an entire year, building this world together.
Yeah, it's the series arc that I feel like really differentiates it from other types of shared world projects, because that series arc plays into every single book that we're writing, and we have to make sure that it's flowing and building and then getting resolved by the end.
That's on you, Ember.
Yeah, I'm working on it right now in the outline.
So Liz, I'll direct this one to you. Was it complicated to keep track of all the elements of the shared world? Did you kind of have like a running doc together to keep everything organized, or how did that process work?
I think everybody else in the group will agree that you asked exactly the right person this question. We do have shared documents together, and a big one is what we call farm to forking people, places, or time, people, and places. So I personally find it difficult in my own writing, and I often have to go back through like a timeline and correct it. So we have a collaborative timeline, and it's a spreadsheet. And so each row is like a scene, and we have notes on, well, which book is this in, which chapter is it in, what day of the week, or what like date in the year is it, and then like also a column for any kind of clues that we have written in the scene that tells us about the timeline. And so as like, obviously Lainey's book starts Karen's got a scene in the very beginning, but like you have a list of all of Lainey's books or Lainey's scenes, and then you start getting into some of my scenes that overlap the timeline. So you have a row that's me, and a row that's Lainey, and a row that's me, and a row that's Lainey, and that helps us kind of keep straight what is happening when. And then we have a list of characters, and including like the tertiary characters, like anybody who gets a name, they have a line in a spreadsheet and a little description about them and what kind of person they are. And same with places. So we create like places. We have Titty's Bar, TIDDY ''S. Mr. Titty runs a bar in Fork Lake, New York. And so like we've created places like this, and we keep them consistent through the series, and we get to chat with each other and say like, well, I was reading Karen's book and she talked about the bar, and we had to have a little bit of a discussion like, well, in my book, it's a bit of a dive. And so do we want to keep that thread going, or from my book to Karen's book, are there like improvements going on at the bar? And our places changing as our characters and Bedfellows farms grow as well. So yeah, it's a lot to keep organized, I think, but it seems like we've done a pretty good job.
Liz has done amazing at this. She's so good at this. And whenever we have questions, I feel like Liz is just the one who tells us where to go. She knows where it's at.
We did.
So Liz is like the owner of the series Bible, the keeper of the Bible.
She's a spreadsheet queen. She's an engineering background. So,
yes.
I can use a spreadsheet, but I can't make it do the fancy things. And that's what, she keeps us in line.
Yeah. And early on, like we have a series brainstorming document. And that was like at the very beginning, we were like, well, who are the characters going to be? And what is the like general overview of the series, and where are we going to take it? So we always have these things to refer back to, because it can be really messy. Like if we didn't have these kind of things, and it would be like, well, I know we talked about it in our Discord server, but like, what did we decide on? And so having one place for everything is, I think, pretty crucial.
And I was going to say, if anyone is thinking of doing this, it took us, we were like in Google. Well, no, we started in Facebook Messenger, which is the worst way to communicate. And then we added the Google Doc, and we were sort of emailing a little bit. And then when, again, Liz made us move to Discord, I think for some of us, okay, for me, because I'm the oldest, it's a little like, I don't know, it's a whole new thing. But it is a great way to organize conversations, because you can have these different, what are they called?
There are channels. So we have
Channels.
like a channel for each specific book, so that when you have discussion around that specific book, you can keep it on one place. And then we have a channel for like our marketing and general series, and then a little off topic for some chit chat, so yeah.
But it's a great way to quickly get an answer to a question, but also to have little discussions. But you can find it again because it's organized in channels. So that was one of the things I wanted to say today, which is just go straight there. If you're going to do something like this, start with Discord. Don't. And then Google is important for holding documents that you need to refer to. But for communication, Discord has been great.
And this level of organization is very new to my process. And so when I say that it has like improved my process, I mean it. Like, I'm carrying this now into other series that I'm writing, because I don't need to wait and hear from my developmental editor that I have the timeline all messed up. I could just keep track of it as I go along. Who knew? So I feel like we are really getting a peek into each other's brains, and how, I've read Erin's outline recently, and she outlines so differently than I do. And I had never just seen a book outline like that. And I was like, I could outline that way. And so I'm trying it right now, so it's, in addition to this project, working so closely with these other authors is just benefiting my work so much. I feel like.
That actually kind of goes into my next question, which was going to be, how did you find it collaborating with friends on this project, and what worked well, and what did you find a little challenging, and what would maybe be a tip for someone who's considering doing something like this?
Well, I can share a challenge. We realized kind of early on that, okay, we had Jackson as a rock star, and we have the family and all this debt. And we eventually were like, why doesn't Jackson just pay the debt? So when you realize there's a plot hole, I think that the challenge and the benefit to having this kind of group is that, like, you can't just solve the plot hole on your own, and you can't write it off and ignore it, because there's a whole web of books from other folks to come after you, that you have to approach collaboratively.
And I think I would jump on that too, that it's, at least when I'm writing, it takes me a while to find the characters in my imagination. But once I do, they're so strong. And that's been both a challenge and a benefit here, because for me, the starting was so much easier because Lainey started. I mean, when the moment I read the very first scene, which is I don't think this is giving anything away, which is the reading of the will of the grandfather, who was the patriarch of the farm, and that Ethan, the eldest sibling, who is this sort of one who's actually farming, brings a sheep to the lawyer's office. I was like, all right, it's on. This is the tone of this series. And that sheep has become like our mascot. And from then on, just both reading her book and working with her on her book, same with Liz, it was like my book had started already. So that, to me, that made my process just, I wrote this book faster than I've written any book, because it, like I said, it was started for me already. But then the challenge is that, we have this grandmother character, Ethel, who is very much present in every book. And we originally was like, let's just have a nosy grandma character, but now she's like freaking steals scenes. And, I had this image and voice for her in my head. But in my edits, as people are going through with the critique read, people are like, really? Is Gran that stern? And I had to say, you know what? You're right. So as she has been written so far, she is not that stern. She's warmer. I need to change that up a little bit. And there's a lot of little moments like that where my imagination could just take me wherever it wandered, I have to sort of stay within the bounds of what's already been created.
Yeah. And something else I wanted to mention too is that at the start of this project, it made me a little nervous, like having to stay in bounds of the previous books, especially being the last one. That really kind of like freaked me out, like, oh my God, I have to read all of their books. And we are writing them more like novella length. So it's not like reading 4 novellas is super hard, but it just kind of, it felt like a bigger pressure being the last book in the series. But actually what has happened is reading all of the books has just been like compounding inspiration for me. And it is not limiting me. It's actually determining the tone of my story. It's making decisions for my creative process that I don't normally experience when I'm just writing by myself. And that's been a big help. I didn't see that one coming. It's been great.
Well, I think part of that, hearing what you're saying, Ember, is like, you know that phrase, if you can do everything, you'll do nothing. I tend to be a slow writer because I have so many ideas that I'm like, maybe I'll go this way. Oh, no, I'm going to go that way. Now I'll do that. And so I'm someone that like constantly rewrites and edits as she goes instead of just going full steam ahead. So because certain decisions have been made for us, I know now that having parameters does not make me feel small. It makes me go, whoop, here we go, instead of second guessing things because things have been established. I also wanted to mention, as a really great thing about this project has been that experience of giving and getting feedback. Like, knock on wood, we haven't had a single moment of upset from any of us. I feel like we're all very open to writing the best book that we can and knowing that we have 4 other authors that have different skills than we do. And so we're able to bring what we bring to each book. Like Karen said, like, or I think it was Liz, something comes up and we're like, oh, well, I think Gran is like this. Karen's not like, no, I want her to be like this. Karen's like, oh, right. Yeah. And she makes the adjustment. And it's just beautiful. It's collaborative and it feels nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to add one more thing. When Lainey was talking about the plot hole about the rock star earlier, it's funny because that plot hole became a pivotal plot point in my book. And again, that was something that kind of like the collaborative process defined something about my book that I would not have thought of otherwise.
I feel such ownership over all 5 of the books, even though I wrote the first one. But like, I am so excited for Liz's book to come out in 2 weeks because like I got to have an opinion. I got to really dictate what my characters say and do and think about in Liz's book, So I really feel like it truly feels like a collaborative effort. Like, you can see Lainey Davis in each of these books so far. Because I know some of my readers initially were like, I don't know, other readers, other writers. And I have been trying to assure them that they're going to love all of the books because I'm deeply involved in all of them.
I mean, there are actual dialogue written by each of us in each other's books. So, sometimes we're just like, just say it how Ethan would say it. And, like I had some little thing for Liz's, Molly is her main female character. And I had said something that didn't quite gel with how, she had seen Molly. So she just wrote dialogue for me, which was great because I didn't have to like figure it out. Molly could speak for herself.
Yeah, and Lainey, to credit to Lainey, like she really kicks it off with that because we have quite a lot of scenes overlap between my book and her book, and she had written Alex and Molly and their dialogue, and not their meet cute, but like the surrounding events of it. And she was so easygoing about me coming into her book and changing it as the way that it was going to be seen in my book. And like, yeah, we all have been kind of rewriting each other's dialogue, and it's been great. So yeah. And also saying like, I recently read Karen's book and saying, well, even it's after the end of my book, but this isn't what I see them doing, and what I see them doing is slightly different. Like my character, Alex, the male main character in Butter You Up, he has a dairy farm, a neighboring dairy farm, but it's kind of like the big thing is that he wasn't working on the family farm. And so in Karen's book, it was like, well, what is Alex's farm doing next? And like, how is that going to continue to work with Bedfellows Farms? And so we were able to like collaborate together and help each other's vision.
And I think the other thing that we've done in collaboratively is setting up the next person's book. So that's like what Liz was just talking about, of Alex being in Lainey's book. And then I worked a lot with Erin's book comes after mine. And so I wanted to set up the incident that starts Erin's book without giving anything away. So there's been a lot of back and forth to see, okay, how can I shine the light your way, but not take away the spotlight?
Yeah, I think that's really great that you were all able to. It's kind of like almost being like an expert level beta reader. Like you get like 4 beta readers that know everything about the universe and can kind of like pick up on things that you might have missed.
Although a beta reader is reading my book, who has also read all the books, and she found something that the rest of us missed. So it's
That's
not
so
foolproof.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I would just add, like, obviously, as we finish our books, these are the first 4 people that get like the full read through.
Yeah.
And that's been really great because I think everybody in here is an excellent author.
I wanted to get into the romance side of it a little bit. So because these are all romances, there's a lot of tropes involved. So Liz, how did you kind of decide which stories and tropes to write about? Was it kind of the tropes that you like reading about, or how did that get decided?
I think pretty straight off the bat, I knew that I wanted to write a grumpy sunshine. And it kind of, I think it's probably my most like grumpy sunshine book that I've ever written. It's like very deep into it. Alex is kind of your typical like exasperated man, and also like a lonely person. And then Molly is a sunshine, and she's very energetic, but she's on one hand, as a van lifer, she's living a life where she gets to meet a lot of people, but she is also insulated. And she grew up as a only kid from a single dad. And so her life has had a lot of that. But she's still like an upbeat, optimistic, outgoing person. And I think I really, I knew that I wanted to have that dynamic early on, and it was easy for me to see these characters as pretty close to who they ended up being in the end. So I don't know if they like spoke to me a little bit, but it was there. As far as other tropes go, I love a workplace romance, and Molly is working for Alex at the dairy farm. She's running his farm stand during the week, and she's also working for Lainey's male main character, Ethan, on the weekends, helping with the Strawberry Pick Your Own Festival. So I love that like forced proximity dynamic of building each other as coworkers or as a boss employee kind of dynamic, and how that pans out. So, I mean, I think those are 2 of my favorite tropes, and I think I leaned into the grumpy sunshine a lot in this book, which is really fun.
I will share that my book is a second chance romance, and I hate writing second chance romance. It's so difficult, but readers love them. And I wanted to start off the series with a really strong trope because I wanted readers to really be here for the rest of it. And so picking that trope really helped determine a lot about the plot, because in second chance romance, obviously you have to create a reason that the characters initially broke up, but it can't be insurmountable because they have to get back together. And so that led me to explore an invisible disability. And it's been important to me to show all different kinds of characters in my book. So my heroine has Crohn's disease, and I so loved the research process for that. I was interviewing people with Crohn's disease and just figuring out why someone from a small town would feel like they had to stay away in a big town to help manage their illness and have access to specialists. So the trope really, once I chose the trope, it helped determine the plot of my book as well.
Sure. Erin, did you want to talk about your trope a little bit as well?
Yeah. So mine's Surprise Baby, which I've never written before. And I have 3 little kids, and one was sort of a surprise baby, but beyond that, I have the female sibling, so it's four male siblings and the one sister. So she's my girl. And my decision to make it Surprise Baby came a little later in my brainstorming process, because I was thinking about what it would be like to, like, we hear about like hot farmers and stuff, but if you're truly the girl that grew up with all these hot brothers, like, what does your life look like? And she has a lot of angst and kind of, everyone sees her through the lens of her family. At least that's how she feels, that everything is about getting to this guy, to this guy, to this guy, this cool family of all these hot guys. And she's tired of it. And so I was like, what would be the best thing that brings the most conflict in this world of 4 brothers? So I'm like, one night stand, surprise baby, and they can't handle it. But I'm having a good time playing with, I'm really kind of allergic to the, like, don't touch my sister type stuff in real life. I'm like, this is her body. She has autonomy. You stay away. So I'm not going that route with it, but they are struggling. And so that's why, so yeah, figuring out how her real life would be with these guys, I made the decision on what would be the most conflicting for them. And I'm having fun. It's really fun.
It seems like everyone's kind of like branching out a little bit with this project and kind of trying out tropes that they maybe wouldn't write normally. So that's great. Would you say each book has the same kind of steam level? Are some steamy and some are more on the sweet side, or is it kind of consistent? Ember, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think we're keeping it pretty consistent. I think that was one of the points that we brought up at the very beginning, was like, we need to make sure that we are at the same level. For me personally, I think I'm reeling it in slightly, just because of the length of the book. But yeah, I think it makes the most sense for reader expectations to maintain a similar spice level.
Karen, I think this is the steamiest of yours that I've read. I think I've read all of your books.
Yeah, I would say that in our other writing, Erin and I are lower on the steam. Like, we're like at 3.5 maybe, or I'm 3.5, she's 3, whereas Liz and Ember are much higher steam, and then Lainey is closer to them. But I do feel like we've sort of like, I rose my boat and they lowered their boat a little bit, so that we're all. But my books, mine's a one night stand, and to me, those end up being steamier, just because I'm like, okay, in the gate, we are going at it, you know. So, and then they have to like figure out their feelings. But I think with regards to the sex, we're also sex positive. And I think that's what's really behind it, which is we are celebrating intimacy as part of the relationship journey. And so whatever that looks like, that's what we all do in our other books. And then the steam level kind of shifts with the need of the particular characters in the book. And I think the other thing that I love every author in this group does so well, and that the tone that we share, is that we hit something really hard emotionally. Like, somebody is going to go through something really challenging emotionally, but at the same time, there's goofy stuff going on in the background, and there's banter. And so it's a constant, it feels real, but crazy at the same and fun. I don't know, like crazy. It's not like out there there is falling in poop. So I guess there's just all the different kinds of humor that can be, but it also feels real, and you go on an emotional journey, which to me, that's the best, most fun kind of romance to read, and it's fun to create that with these people.
And I just wanted to share a little anecdote because Karen was starting to brainstorm on her book, and she said, "Okay, I need Sam needs a place to stay, and we need to give him a reason why he can't stay with Alex and Molly, my characters, and butter you up." And so we decided that Alex would be a dirty talker, and so like that, I hadn't planned it, but it helped. Like Karen helped me elevate what the steam level of my book was, basically.
Karen, you touched a little bit on the humor. So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about that. So maybe I'll start with you for that. Do you have any tips for writing humor? And does everyone kind of like bounce jokes off of each other in the group chat, or how did that process work?
Well, I think this is a hard question because, I mean, like Erin, like I've said, we come from a theater background, and before I started writing fiction, my only writing experience had been creating. Well, I did improv and created collaborative shows, and we're talking like very slapsticky. I worked at a Ren fair for several years, and I was a washer wench. And so we wrote 3 shows together, including The Queen's Big Load, and other fun stuff like that. And it's all on your feet, trying it out. And I don't think I could teach somebody how to write humor. I think you just have to have that. To me, okay, this is what I know. People who are funny, because in my performing career, I was often surrounded by the funniest people, mostly women, who I'd ever known, and I still love these women. And to me, you look at reality and you tip it a little bit. And I think you just have to have that kind of brain to write comedy. But there's a lot of different ways you can go at it. It can be physical, it can be banter, it can be situational. And this is one tip I guess I could give. It's from my improv background. When I'm in a scene and I'm not sure what should happen next, I always go, get him into trouble, get him into worse trouble. So weirdly, comedy comes from putting someone in the worst possible situation, and then it's how they deal with it creates the humor. But Lainey is really good at puns. I am not good at that. So, everybody has a different way into it.
Yeah, and I think that something that I try to do is like the artful full circle, like mentioning something at the start of the book and repeating it just enough to be funny throughout. And I think we've implemented certain things that we've chosen to like reiterate in each of our books. I do feel like the presence of the sheep is one of the things that we're all utilizing.
And what is the sheep's name?
I would like someone else to say it because I cannot nail the accent.
Her name is Barbara Streisand Fed.
That is really great.
So good.
You mentioned puns and Lainey coming up with a lot of puns. Lainey, are a lot of the punny titles from you, or where did those titles come from?
I think we all pretty heavily workshopped all of it. I know for me, I think this is my funniest book. And I think I was able to do that because I have this constant thread going with these gals where I'm like, wouldn't it be funny if the sheep barged in on him and Leah when they were trying to do it? Like, we could just like imagine these scenarios, and if they say yes, that is hilarious, then I know I'm onto something. So you asked about puns. I don't know, the puns just all started to feel really natural. it was Liz who suggested Farm to Forking as the series name. And I felt like once we had that, that set a tone for me where I was just hunting for
I
puns.
think there is a Google Doc that is just a list of food puns and potential titles somewhere that, if we do a spin-off series, we'll just go there.
That's great. Well, I was definitely enjoying the puns as I was getting my questions together. So I think you all did a good job with those. Ember, let's talk to you about this one first. So how do you plan to market your book differently as a group versus how you would market as just one author?
Ooh, this is a great question. So one of the things that I've loved the most about this project is we all have really different avenues of like reaching out to people and like what are we used to in terms of promotion and like who do we know. Like our network just exploded now that there's all of us coming together. And so the opportunities that we've been able to tap into to market this are just so much more. It's incredible. I'm still in awe every day of the different opportunities that we're able to take advantage of. So I think one of the biggest things though about this project for me personally is that, and I think that most of us approach the project with this in mind, but we looked into tying our book into spin-offs or different series that are already existing. And so for me, that was like one of the big points about my book was that it's going to lead into a different series that's going to follow it. And so that marketing decision, that's something that I'm very excited to lean into after this project. But just, I don't know, working with these lovely people and all their different ways of setting things up, I just feel like everything is so much more structured than if I were doing it alone. Because when it comes time to like promote and advertise a new book or a new series, I can get a little lax. So they've been propping me up personally, I would say.
I think that Ember may have blacked out or deleted from her brain the process of designing our covers, because she took the lead on that. And I think that was the biggest challenge that we went through, was trying to figure out, like, it's hard enough to find the language to communicate what you mean to a cover designer when you're one person. But when you are 5 people and none of you are like exactly an artist, and you're trying to sort of like, we got to the point where we're just like, each of us like, okay, here's what I mean. I'm making this in Canva and I'm sending it to you. Or, I mean, we would just have these extensive phone calls, and we tortured the poor girl who did our covers in some ways, I think. But that was hard. That was our really biggest, I don't know, it was like trying to fit all of our brains through the eye of a needle, and it wasn't always working.
Yeah, and covers are hard in general, like deciding, like, do we want illustrated? Do we want man chest? I mean, that was just a hard group decision anyway, to come together, because we all have our own styles of making covers. They're all very unique. And so figuring out what made the most sense for this specific project, it was difficult. It was a good challenge, and I'm really happy with what came out of it. So
I think a part of this too is like having to release some of your ego or your ideas of how you want things done, because you've got 4 people with you that have this collective knowledge that is tapping into stuff that you don't have. So for me personally, I've always had illustrated covers. Always. It's been very important to me. And I've always said I would never have a man chest cover on my book because it doesn't line up with my style of writing. And we don't have man chests. They're all clothed, right? Yeah, I think they all got. But so I was like, I'm gonna release that for this, because I want to learn something new. I want to see what would happen if I put out a book that looked a bit more contemporary, where mine look a bit zany, And I'm really glad to be doing it, and found a cover that feels like me, but also feels like the world. So I think if people are considering getting into a collaborative thing like this, there's going to be moments like that where you're just like, well, I signed on to do this because I wanted the experience of learning from other authors. So let me now learn. And that's been really good.
I think that's kind of been like a theme throughout the talk, is that you kind of have to like drop like what you know before and what you're familiar with and kind of accept the discomfort and learn from each other. So that's great. And actually, my next question was about the covers. So thank you for getting there before me, actually. I also wanted to talk about your plans for the future with this universe. Do you plan to write a different series, a spin-off? Is that a conversation that's ongoing, or?
So up next for us for the series is putting the books in audio. And that is, it's a very different endeavor. I think everyone is aware that like audio is a big financial investment. So we've been working on, thinking about how to do that profitably. And I'm not sure if it's okay to share on the Kobo Writing Life channel, but we are planning to do a Kickstarter in conjunction with the audio version and some other things. But I don't think we have gotten to the point where we're thinking what's beyond audio, because it's a big undertaking for us, and that is our next project.
And we have obviously already talked about our 2 audiobook experts in here, but I don't have any audiobooks for mine, and I don't think Ember does either.
I have audiobooks in production right now, but nothing available.
So it's like we have the experts, and then we have me, who's a big noob on this. So
Yeah, actually, again, that was one of my questions that I was going to ask if audio was upcoming. So everyone continues to predict my questions. It's great. Yeah, Karen and Erin, was that important for you to have audiobook versions as because of your background?
Yeah, for me, it's super important. This is the first time I've ever released something print first without the audio. And it feels a little risky for me because I was an audiobook narrator before I wrote any novels. I always prioritized my audio listeners because that's where my audience was. And I'm slowly growing. We call people that only read with their eyes eyeball readers. So I'm getting more eyeball readers these days. But I had to talk to, like, in my readers group and my circles, and say, I love you. I'm trying something a little different here. The audio is coming. If you can support the print release, I'd be so thrilled. The audio is coming. So yeah, I knew no matter what, I needed to put this in audio, or most of my audience wouldn't get to enjoy it. So
We actually are in the process. Well, I think we can share that Erin will be narrating all of the books from all the female points of view. And we are in the process of casting a male narrator who can stand up next to her proudly and record the male points of view. But I don't think we can announce it yet because we haven't actually made an offer and blah, blah, blah. But it's coming. We don't know exactly when. It'll depend on a few things. But the Kickstarter is really next. And I think all of us sort of have a fantasy of writing a novella for the grandmother, because almost every one of us have introduced potential suitors for our books. I think I did too. So I don't know if that'll happen, but maybe we'll have to fight over it. But I think all of us have said we'd love to do this again sometime, or maybe invite other writers into the world if they're interested. So, but we don't right now. I think we're all focusing on the Kickstarter, the audiobook, and then our spinoffs from this.
Yeah, it seems like you've already got a lot going on there. So one thing at a time. So I've kept you all for a while now. So I just wanted to kind of wrap up and have you all share what you have coming up next, whether it's your spinoff within the series or something that you're writing on your own. So Erin, let's start with you for that.
Yeah, so my next thing is Bringing Home the Bacon, which comes out August 8th, and I'm working on a Christmas book. So I'm hoping that'll come out in like early November.
And sorry, maybe you can also share where listeners can find you if they want to learn more about your books as well.
Yeah, so my website is erinmallon.com. And then I also have a fun readers group on Facebook, and it's called Erin Mallon's Feisty Fitsies. And you can join us there. And I do my cover reveals there first, and I put out all my ARC stuff there, and we have a really good time.
That's awesome. Liz, what about you?
Yeah, so Butter You Up. This is the only existing physical copy of it, but it comes out on June 13th on all retailers, but actually today on my direct store. So if you want to read it right now, you can. And then my next book that comes out is a Christmas novella called Ghost of Xmas Past. And I'm working on that one right now. And I just did a cover reveal for my April release, which seems a little bananas to be talking that far out already. But that is the last book in my Age Like Fine Wine series, which is about 4 women in their 40s who spend a year in Europe. And then my spinoff is going to be from this series is going to be about Kit. So Kit is Alex's epic bromance BFF, and a lot of readers have already talked about how amazing he is, and I can't wait for him to get his own story, and hopefully I'll be announcing that soon.
Ember, what about you?
Well, what's immediately on deck for me is having a baby in a few weeks. I am due in late June. But then after that, this book, my book in this series, A Fork in the Road, is coming out in September. And then that is going to lead into a spinoff of my Bayshore rom-com series. I don't have any like specific dates announced. It'll probably be mostly next year. And then beyond that, I'm also going to be doing a continuation of my billionaire series, The Bad Boys of Wall Street. And I'm in the outlining phase for that right now. But yeah, I got to take it a little easy once this new baby comes. But you can find me. I have a website, emberleighromance.com, but I also have a storefront, emberleighstore.com, where you can get bundles of my work at a discount as well. And then I have an awesome Facebook readers group called Ember Leigh's Blossoms, because I love flowers. And that's pretty much where I hang is Facebook, a little bit of Instagram too.
Lainey, what about you?
Well, my book in the series, Since You've Been Gone, came out a couple weeks ago, and my entire catalog is on Kobo Plus. If anyone wants to check out my ebooks or audiobooks, this July I'm releasing the next book in my Forging series, which is a new adult sports angsty romance, because I needed a little bit of a break after I could do 2 rom-coms in a row, and then I need to write something angsty usually. Let's see. My website is laineydavis.com, and I am not great at social media, but there's links to sign up for my newsletter on my website, and I share funny stories in there. I do reader polls. We have a Facebook group for the series, or a Facebook page. It's Farm to Forking with the numeral 2. So people can pop over there and see pictures of what we think Barbara looks like and where we think our hot farmers got their inspiration, etc.
That's great. Karen, what about you?
So my book, For Fork's Sake, comes out 7/11. That's how I remember it, July 11th. And then my spinoff will be next, and I also have no idea exactly when, but it's a series that I call sort of Parks and Rec meets Silicon Valley. And I was going to set it in a small town in North Carolina, but now I'm setting it in a small town in upstate New York, down the road from Forklick, called Climax, which is referred to many times in our books, with sexual puns attached. And so I've decided this series is going to be called Welcome to Climax. And it's basically these small town folks who work at the rec department and the disruption that happens when a Silicon Valley company comes and sort of plants themselves in the small town. And you can find me at KarenGray.com, Grey. And I also have a storefront with bundle discounts. It's KarenGrayBooks.com. And I'm on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, but my newsletter is also probably the best way to keep up with me. And all my books are on Kobo Plus too, both ebook and audiobook.
We love to hear that. So Vanessa has shared links to all your websites in the comments. So if anyone wants to visit, they can click through those. Thank you all for joining me. This was so fun. I loved hearing more about the series and the writing process. For anyone listening, no problem. For anyone listening, we will have our next Q&A announced soon. So stay tuned for that. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.